Welcome to episode 26. Where we last left off, Challenger Base was flying towards this anomaly in the northwest crater, on the very south edge of the northwest crater. So our crew, Munpont, Jarek, and Irlas, are falling towards their destination. And at this point, it's very hard to make out where exactly this thing is supposed to be. I'm kind of judging it off of the ScanSat indicator, which tells me it should be. I'm basically coming down on top of it, or at least very close to it. And yeah, you can just about make out there's a little thing there. That is the anomaly, but it's in kind of a difficult spot. So we're going to land in this flat region, and then we'll send out one of the crew to fly over and investigate. So coming down now, killing off our speed. The fuel margins on this are a little bit tight. Keep that in mind. That will be important later. But for now, we just focus on putting ourselves down without putting a hole in the ground. And we can just see it disappearing over the hill there. We are coming down on somewhat of an incline, but nothing too bad. And we touch down. So now, admiring the internal view before getting out. And this is Munpont here, and we're just going to fly over with the RCS pack to see what this anomaly is all about. So admiring the landscape, the way those mountains and craters look, and as we get closer, it starts to take shape. Some kind of large monolithic structure displaying some kind of spacecraft, clearly not of Kerbal origins. There's a large plaque on the front. What does it say? Neil Armstrong. That's not a Kerbal I've ever heard of, because that is, well, the name doesn't end with Kerman. And what's this 1930 to 2012? That's not how we count our years here. We're on year 2 or something. Let's plant a flag so we can mark this anomaly for future reference. Put it on the charts for us to see. What should we call this site? We will name it Munar Anomaly 1. Fix the capitalization there. Neil Armstrong doesn't sound very much like a Kerbal name. And that ship design isn't very Kerbal either. There is clearly something mysterious going on here. Let's fly up to the top of this really rather large structure and take a look at this. It looks to be a lander of some sort with the engine stuck inside of it and these very large, robust legs. Let's fly on top of it. It is rather small for a lander and rather bulky and asymmetrical. Clearly, whoever was designing this did not know much about symmetry. We have discovered the memorial of a legendary Kerbonaut. Not any Kerbonaut we've ever heard of. Let's stand on top of this. And I think we're floating on top of this. Something is clearly afoot here. Well, Munpont's curiosity satisfied, he flies back to the ship. We don't want to linger here for too long. After all, we don't know who put that there, and we don't know if they're still here, and we wouldn't want to find out either way. That is not the purpose of this mission. This is one of scientific inquisition and discovery, and sometimes the answer will just be more questions. So he flies back, comes over the top, turns around, careful not to bang into the solar panels, and takes his seat back at the pilot's seat. And we can start drilling for ore in the crater and converting that into fuel, which will help carry us on towards our next destination. Which, there is another anomaly in one of these craters, which is also a new biome, so we can kind of fulfill 2 of the mission requirements at once, getting science from all the biomes and also investigating this anomaly. Now look how quickly that ore tank filled, now that we've added those radiators. So it should be that close small crater there, which is basically just south and a little bit east of us. So we lift off and fire our engines that way, guiding us over We have to make it over this lip of this crater, but that shouldn't be too hard. Angling ourselves at 45 degrees, of course, to maximize the distance we can fly with our limited delta V. 265 meters per second is gonna be cutting it close. I'm going off Flight Engineer, of course, because the delta V readout is inaccurate. So we just admire, the flight drifting over the surface of the moon, arcing over it in a parabolic trajectory. Our suicide burn delta V is 230 meters per second, so we should have about 30 meters per second to spare. And we want to be right in the middle of this crater, so we'll have to burn a little bit that way. Careful here, I don't want to use up too much of my fuel. That should be fine. Yeah, I'm really cutting it close with these margins here. Well, we can just land kind of far away from it, I guess, and then fly over. So now we just have to fly the rest of the way in and land, which this is pretty heavy, and I don't want to land coming in too quickly. So I'm going to try to pick close to the middle, that landing spot, because it would be... We have one chance to do this landing. If I land on a slope, I will not have the fuel to fix that error if I end up tipping over, so we're going to have to do this right. I'm just watching as the ground comes close. There are lots of craters and slopes around here, so this will be a difficult landing to perform. Moonpont is a rookie, but he has leveled up during his time on the moon, so he's gotten a little bit more experienced. So now just waiting. There's the indicator there. And I can't really see where this anomaly is. It should be somewhere among those three craters in a line there. Somewhere in that region, although it's kind of hard to make out from this distance. It'll become more obvious once we actually come close. But now coming in, 10 seconds left to our suicide burn. I want to do it more or less exactly at 0 because we don't have a lot of margin. We can do a little bit early, killing off some speed. And just watching my delta V, watching these numbers tick down here. And we'll have just enough delta V to kill off the last bit of speed. 0 seconds. Come on. Slow it down. And 2 meters per second. Okay, we're going down too fast. Brace for impact. Brace. Brace. And we lost everything. Okay, what did we lose? Engines and the fuel tank. Okay. Great. We're gonna be here a while. At least we recorded some impact signs. So we can at least... It wasn't a total loss. And we are tipping over. Well, that's great. We lost that big fuel tank and we lost all of our engines. So we are just stuck here. 34 days, we've performed 2 successful landings, and that is looking like this might be the end of the Challenger base. No, I think we can still recover this. I think we'll just have to send probably a series of supply missions, and Jarek can then glue everything together. I don't think those engines that we had on there can be manipulated by the Kerbals in construction. So we'll have to find out. Well, while we're here, we can at least make some use of our time. We still have all the experiments. We can deploy the drills and at least fill up what fuel tanks we have left. We also lost the ladder. The ladder was attached to that fuel tank. Crew report. You muse on the chances of having landed in this specific crater. Oh yeah, we picked it from data from a previous mission, right? Yes, we did. Except that we clearly didn't I think I know what happened actually is I didn't fill up my ore tanks. So over the course of the flight, it would have been, the ISRU would have been reprocessing the ore into fuel, except I didn't do that. And it ended up costing us. Well, we can do these experiments. The pressure, they say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Well, let's transmit that back and then process this one in the lab. Gravioli, after calibration, it is able to detect things between the moon and Kerbin. And we process that, the materials study from the Midland craters. As you look away, one sample makes a run for it. Let's transmit that, and then we also do one copy of the mystery goo. The goo seems to be less dense here. Transmit that, and now we can clean the experiments in the lab. Clean those out, and those will reprocess. Can't do magnetometer on the ground. Collect impact data. Yeah, that was our impact into the surface. Seismic waves traveling through the landing gear into the ship. The sensor picks up distant impacts reflecting along the interior of the moon, although the most recent impact was not very distant at all. Process that in the lab. And log our temperature. You're unsure about the surrounding area, but your temperature is definitely elevated after that landing. Yeah, we combusted some fuel, I guess. Or we didn't even have any fuel left to combust. We just crumpled the fuel tank. Let's process these. Find it difficult to finish your report with everything at an angle. That was probably a jarring impact. Clean those. Well, the bottom of the spacecraft certainly looks rather emptier. So let's do our EVA science. Or actually, we have to do some flag duty first. Jarek Kerman, the engineer, she's going to survey the damage. So let us plant our flag. Certainly an eventful landing. We'll remember this spot with mixed feelings. Midland craters. Challenger base here. Yeah, I think we're going to stay in this crater here for a while. Yeah, we underestimated our fuel needs and kind of lost all of our engines. Oh well. Such is the nature of the job, I guess. You start to say something dramatic and poignant, only to be cut off by a random radio chatter. The pattern of this surface sample is particularly interesting. Yeah, because it's got bits of spacecraft mixed into it. Keep that. Jump up and fly back into the lab. Can't climb up the ladder anymore because it is gone. Well, we can at least transmit those, and then when we go to investigate the anomaly, we can collect another copy. So it is somewhere over this way. And I think I saw it just barely coming in for approach. It's very small, hard to make out, but it should be this general direction, and if we just keep flying, we'll see it eventually. These anomalies tend to be rather large, hard to miss from once you're within a close enough distance. So we have to make it over this little lip here. I'm sure the science team is busy analyzing the nature of this place. Craters within craters. That means this large crater was created in an old impact long ago and has since been eroded away partly by, well, other impacts. And there it is there, that black dot there, exactly in the center of the crater, and it looks rather large. And it bears a striking resemblance to that monolith by the Space Center back home. What is the connection here? Is there a connection? Who put it there? Did someone put it there, or is this part of the impactor that we're seeing that made this crater? It is in the middle of it, and it seems to be buried into the hillside somewhat. Perhaps this is the impactor. Let's get up nice and close and see what this thing is all about. And we also have to slow down, and we're going to completely overshoot. Quick, turn around, slow down. And yeah, this is very much a similar style to that one by the Space Center, though this is partly buried. Of course, we have to fall and tumble over. Now we can make our way over. Jarek Kerman, I'm sure, has all eyes in mission control watching, or at least all eyes that aren't busy focused on figuring out a way to salvage the mission. But those on the science team, I'm sure, are watching through her helmet feed as she falls into the ground or something like that. No, they're making sure what their suspicions about this object are correct. Let's see, there seems to be some kind of markings on the side of it. It's very dark and kind of flat, but as we get closer, her helmet light is illuminating the contrast. Squad. Fascinating. This is of the exact same design as the one by the Space Center. And I believe there was another one that we saw elsewhere on Kerbin as well. Moon Anomaly 2. It's just like the one by the Space Center. I wonder what the implications of this are. Patterning of the surface is interesting, etc., etc. Well, having collected the data about this particular site, we can stand on it. And then we have to get back to the ship, of course. Limited life support in the spacesuit and all that. So now I'm just going to arc high over the surface. And I've got a good bit of EVA propellant left. This should be good to make it the rest of the way. Although I may actually have to boost myself a little bit higher because I'm going to crash into the ground here. The moon's gravity is easy to underestimate, especially when using the EVA packs. I think, at least early in the game, it's probably the hardest place you can get to. Hardest in terms of, able to use your EVA pack. It has the highest gravity. I think Duna is even worse. And I don't know if there's any place worse for the EVA pack than Duna. It is usable there, but it's very, very difficult, and you do end up having to thrust upward constantly. Okay, speaking of thrusting upwards, we have to start doing that now, because otherwise I am going to slam into this thing at 50 meters per second. And not only would that probably kill Jarek, but it would probably damage the spacecraft further, which is really the last thing we need. So we guide our approach in until we descend closer to the spacecraft, the stricken base on the surface, and the hatches on this side. We're going to have to weave in between all these panels. The radiators have gotten a nice glow to them. And be careful not to crash into it there. And fly back into the lab, where you will at least those two will be kept busy by the science and the research that they have to perform. Review the data, let's process those. We are almost at capacity with the data storage of this thing, so they'll be busy for a while. We've got plenty of life support. They're not really in any hurry, so we can just admire the sunset, work through the lunar night, and yeah, half of the crater is still lit owing to the steep walls of it until we are plunged into the inevitable dark of the night. And as the stars wheel overhead over the next few days, um, I'm sure they're keeping themselves busy. And wow, look at that. That is fascinating to behold. Well, we'll have to see what happens to the crew in another episode. Until next time.